My name is Vichai. I'm 81 years old, and I want to begin with a story. Not a story from a book, a story from my own life. A story that embarrassed me when I finally understood it clearly, and that I am sharing with you now because I believe it will give you something real. For many years I was a man who appeared calm. I moved slowly. I spoke carefully. I sat for long hours in meditation without visible agitation. People who knew me from a distance assumed I had found some genuine form of inner steadiness. But there was something they could not see, and something I could not fully see myself for a long time. My calm was a performance, not in the sense that it was entirely false, but in the sense that it depended completely on the conditions around me cooperating. When things went the way I needed them to go, I was calm. When someone treated me with respect, I was calm. When my practice produced the states I was hoping for, I was calm. But when the conditions shifted, when someone dismissed me, when something I valued was threatened, when an outcome I had invested in failed, the apparent calm broke. And what broke through was not small. It was proportional to how long I had been maintaining the appearance of steadiness without genuinely building it. And I understood, eventually and painfully, that a calm which depends on favorable conditions is not calm at all. It is just the absence of provocation. Maybe you recognize something in this. Maybe you are someone who manages very well most of the time, and then finds yourself disproportionately affected by something that seems like it should be manageable. Maybe you have wondered why certain things penetrate you so deeply when your surface appears so composed. Maybe you have felt the gap between how you want to be and how you actually are when life applies real pressure. If any of that is familiar, stay with me, because the Zen teaching at the heart of what I want to share is not about appearing calm. It is about finding something so genuinely grounded inside that there is simply less available to be disturbed. There is a Zen story I first heard many decades ago, and at the time I thought I understood it. A student came to a master and said, "I want to achieve a mind that nothing can disturb." The master poured tea into the student's cup. He kept pouring after it was full. The tea spilled over the edge, onto the table, onto the floor. The student said, "Stop, the cup is already full." The master looked at the student and said, "You are like this cup. Until you empty what you have filled yourself with, nothing new can enter." The student expected to be taught how to build a stronger container. The master was pointing at something entirely different. The path to a mind that nothing can affect is not building better defenses. It is emptying what the cup is already full of. When I first heard that story, I thought the cup was filled with negative things, with anger and fear and confusion, and I set about trying to remove those. But that was not what the master was pointing at. The cup I needed to empty was filled with something more subtle and more pervasive than obvious negative emotions. It was filled with opinions I had never examined, with requirements I had placed on life without knowing I had placed them, with images of how I should be treated and how things should go, and what I deserved and what was unacceptable, with a story about who I was that needed constant confirmation from the world around me. All of that was in the cup, and all of it was what made me so easy to disturb. You see, the things that disturb us most deeply are almost never the things themselves. They are the gap between the thing and our requirement. Someone speaks rudely, and the rudeness itself may be unpleasant. But what produces genuine agitation is the internal judgment that this should not be happening to me, that I deserve better treatment, that this is evidence of something wrong with my situation or my worth or my world. That internal addition, that requirement, is what the disturbance is actually made of. Remove the requirement, and what remains is simply an event. Unpleasant, perhaps, but not destabilizing. And here's what I didn't understand then. The work of becoming genuinely unaffected is not the work of becoming less sensitive. It is the work of becoming more honest about what the cup is actually full of, more honest about what requirements you are carrying without knowing you are carrying them, more honest about where your identity is actually located, because it is almost always located in something that the world can reach, and therefore something the world can disturb. The Zen approach to this is not gentle in the way that word is often used. It does not coddle. It does not allow you to remain comfortable with comfortable explanations. It says, look directly at what is, not at what should be, not at what you prefer, at what is. And when you look directly at what is, without adding the narrative of what it means and what it says about you and whether it matches your requirements, something very interesting happens. The disturbance loses much of its fuel, because the fuel was never in the thing itself. It was in the story you were adding to the thing. Let me describe what this looks like in practice, not in meditation, in ordinary daily life. You are in a situation that would normally produce agitation. Someone has been dismissive. Something has not gone as planned. An old fear has been activated by a small event. The usual process is immediate. The event triggers the interpretation. The interpretation produces the emotion. The emotion produces behavior. All of it happens in what feels like one continuous moment. What the Zen practice of genuine calm is actually training is the capacity to introduce a gap somewhere in that sequence, to notice the event before you have fully entered the interpretation, to see the interpretation forming before you have fully become the emotion. That gap, however small, changes everything. Because inside that gap you are not simply being swept along, you are present. And presence, genuine presence, is the actual ground of the calm that Zen is pointing toward. This is not easy. That is worth saying clearly. Everything I am describing requires cultivation that takes time, and that happens mostly in small, unglamorous moments, rather than dramatic ones. It happens every time you notice yourself beginning to be reactive and choose to breathe before responding. It happens every time you catch the requirement forming and ask whether that requirement is actually necessary. It happens every time you stay with discomfort instead of immediately resolving it through reaction. It happens in the ordinary texture of days lived with a little more honesty than the day before. There is no shortcut, but there is also no mystery. The path is the practice, and the practice is available in every moment. What most people don't realize is that the Zen masters who seem so unaffected did not achieve that quality through some special endowment or through dramatic enlightenment events. They achieved it through the patient, repeated, unglamorous work of emptying the cup, of examining every requirement, of questioning every story, of meeting every moment with as much honesty as they could bring, and then returning to honesty when they had lost it. The stability they eventually embodied was built the same way that any real capacity is built, through repetition, through failure, through return, through the refusal to accept performance as a substitute for the real thing. You know what surprised me most? When genuine calm began to develop, it did not feel the way I had imagined it would feel. I had imagined it would feel like a kind of elevated stillness, a detachment from the ordinary movements of life. What it actually felt like was simpler than that, and more human. It felt like having enough room to feel something without being entirely possessed by it, room to think before responding, room to be in a difficult situation without losing the sense that you are still you, still present, still capable of choice. That room is not dramatic, but it changes the quality of everything. It changes how you receive difficulty, how you move through conflict, how you inhabit your ordinary hours, how you age, how you face what cannot be avoided. There is something I need to say about the relationship between this kind of calm and genuine caring, because it is often misunderstood. The person who has developed genuine inner steadiness is not less affected by what matters. They are less affected by what does not matter. They feel loss more honestly, not less, because they are not defended. They engage more fully, not less, because they are not protecting a performance. The calm that Zen is pointing toward is not the calm of distance, it is the calm of depth. The capacity to be fully present in whatever is happening without being entirely at its mercy. A Zen teacher I once heard put it this way: the tree that survives the storm is not the tree that never bends. It is the tree whose roots go deep enough that bending does not become breaking. The calm that lets nothing affect you is not rigidity, it is depth. And depth comes from the work of emptying the cup, from becoming more honest about what you are requiring from life and from yourself and from other people, from discovering, slowly and imperfectly, what remains when the requirements fall away. That remainder, simple and ordinary and entirely unglamorous, is the thing the Zen masters were pointing at all along. At 81 years old, I am still working on this. I still find things that disturb me more than they probably should. I still notice the old requirements surfacing in unexpected moments. I still catch myself mid-complaint about what should not be. But I catch it faster, and I know now what to do when I catch it. Not to suppress it, to look at it honestly, to see what requirement is underneath it, to ask whether that requirement is actually necessary for my peace. And very often, when I look clearly, the answer is no. It is an old habit, a conditioned insistence, something that the cup had been carrying long before I knew the cup was full. If these words are reaching you today, perhaps this is the right moment to ask yourself one simple question. What is your cup currently full of that you have not yet chosen to examine? You do not need to empty it all at once, but the seeing is the beginning. And if this message gave you something real to work with, tell me in the comments what most consistently disturbs your calm. Not to fix it immediately, to name it honestly, because sometimes naming what fills the cup is the first act of beginning to empty it.